And I had an idea of where to enter the market. I had started listening to podcasts on the topic of real estate investing for a good 18 months before I started to taper down my day job. And then finally decided that I was going to wonder what if I didn't try to make that happen.
Welcome to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the seven figure journey. My name is David Gilliland. I'm one of your hosts. We are delighted to have Whitney Hill with us from SnapADU. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. I'm excited to be here.
And you're calling out of San Diego. I know, and you shared with me, of course, there are issues there and in a lot of other areas to find sufficient housing. And this is something that your business solves. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you solved that problem and how you got started?
Happy to. So SnapADU, the ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit. For those who don't know, these are smaller homes behind a primary residence on a residential lot. The California regulations that were passed about 5 years ago made it much easier to build these smaller units. So around the time those were passed, we started SnapADU to focus just on getting really good at designing, permitting, and building accessory dwelling units. I co-founded the company with Mike Moore, who was a general contractor at the time, who was doing remodels, new construction homes, and a lot of different things, and had built some ADUs and was looking to specialize. Meanwhile, my background was in operations management and strategy consulting. I had left corporate America a few years prior to strike it out on my own in real estate investing, and was actually doing some extensions of smaller homes out in the New York City area. We were doubling the square footage of Cape Cods and turning them into larger homes to sell. So I moved out to San Diego, though, and learned about the ADU movement and was very excited to start something locally and to hopefully apply a lot of the knowledge that I'd gained in residential construction and couple that up with the operations experience I had. So Mike and I quickly grew SnapADU to now be a team of 15 employees. We build about 40 units each year, and our average contract size is around $500,000. So these are larger accessory dwelling units, sometimes multiple units. And we specialize to really get good at our craft, which has also helped us build out our brand more quickly just in our geography.
Well, I wish my lot was large enough for a $500,000 home to sit in the back, but not quite there yet. Whitney, tell us just a little bit here. When you had that moment and you wanted to quit corporate and go off on your own, what inspired you to be an entrepreneur? Why give up the steady?
Man, I considered it for a decade. I had always had the entrepreneurial bug, had gotten to experiment with it along the way with college organizations, that sort of thing. But I kept making the safe decisions to take those opportunities to work for someone else and build my expertise first in a management training program, in actually a supply company, and then also to work at Bain and Company on strategy consulting jobs where I learned so much so quickly about a dozen different industries. So when I finally pulled the trigger, it was because I felt like I had the background to succeed on my own, and I had an idea of where to enter the market. I had started listening to podcasts on the topic of real estate investing for a good 18 months before I started to taper down my day job. And then finally decided that I was going to wonder what if I didn't try to make that happen. Now that was almost 8 years ago at this point, so it takes a while at doing the same thing over and over again. I think before you become good at it, and it takes a lot of strength to push through those times when it feels like it's not the right decision. There've been many of those times, but looking back, I'm just so proud to have found that lane and finally get to execute and use all these skills that I've built up over now almost 2 decades in business.
Well, that's great. Well, welcome to the dark side or the light side. Maybe we're the light side. So glad to have you in the entrepreneurial space with us. Let's you've done well. You've grown well. A lot of us we're all playing in this seven figure space. What are some of the things, given your background, given some of the challenges you've had to face? What are some of the things that have really helped you? You would say these are some nuggets you learned along the way that helped you move from 1 million to where you are today, well beyond that.
Oh, there's so many. I guess to pick some important ones, I think really understanding the inner workings of various pieces of a business has served me well. I tend to, it's a blessing and a curse because I tend to see the whole picture, meaning that I'll know how to thread different insights together across different departments, what that has as far as ramifications for everything from our sales to our pre-construction to our customer service. So I think understanding how different businesses fit together allowed me to see those commonalities that need to be in place regardless of what industry you're in. And having that background then has meant that as we've grown at SnapADU, I've known what needed to come next to succeed. I know what good looks like at scale. So again, I think having that experience working for best in class companies really meant that I could hit the ground running here, to know what our end goal was like. So that's a big one. I'd say the other big one would be in doing deep dives in data. That's something I've never really gotten away from. I've always had analysis as a key tool in my tool belt, and here I am, even this far into my career, and I still am opening Excel daily. It feels like, because you'd be just shocked at how few people make that investment to understand how to do some high quality analysis to see where things are actually going, to do some projections. So I still find that to be a huge part of our differentiation, because others are simply not willing to do the work to figure out what's going on behind the curtain.
Great. I'm going to pull some of this because I mean you hit two main points. So let's just touch them. One, you said, hey, A plus B doesn't always equal C. There's a system that's working,
Yes.
multiple systems that interact. You tweak sales, you mess with customer service. You're messing with all sorts of parts of the system. And then the second nugget I was hearing you sharing was this idea of, hey, do we even know our numbers? Now, I wasn't certain if you were talking about inside numbers or if you were talking about outside projections and trends. So we'll dive into that in a second. But first, let's go back to this systems piece and let's break it down into, what do you mean? Give us an example. We're like, yeah, we saw this happening. We needed to make a change, but that was going to affect these two other areas of our business. So we had to change in three areas simultaneously to pull this off, or whatever it was. Are you comfortable sharing examples so we can kind of open our minds a little?
Totally. The question just which one to share. There's weekly examples.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
I'll pick. So in our industry, regulations are a really important one. One would be the requirement for solar arrays on new construction ADUs. Those requirements have evolved over the years. So for a period, they were required in all situations. Then there was an exemption passed where, in some cases, if it was a certain size in a certain climate zone, you might not have to have solar. So that's a great example of something that's going to affect truly every part of our business, from our website experience, really even pre-sales, where we're sharing that information with clients around what to expect for cost. All of that needs to be conveyed up front so that we have this, we have really a persona of being an expert in our space. So we never want people to be surprised. So sharing on the website is step one. Step two would be in our sales process, testing to make sure that we know whether or not solar will be required on a unit. And by the way, this is a big expense, probably 10K or so to do design and install for solar on a project. So during the sales process, we would test if that were required. Then in our design department, they would need to also know when and how to add a solar array if it's required, or if it's not, how to convey that exemption formula so that the jurisdiction will accept it. State and local laws intersecting is another big hiccup in the ADU space that you have to deal with all the time, where the state may have this exemption formula, for example, but a city isn't applying it correctly. So we need to know how to present that, when to push back with our permitting team if that's the case. And then lastly, how this is going to play out when we actually go to execute on it in the build. What vendor are we going to use? How is that going to be laid out in the field? What will be the install details? So that seemingly small kind of a change affects every bit of our business. And so understanding what all those tangents would be allows us to avoid surprises in that customer journey. So anytime we have a change like that, we're asking, where should this be inserted on the website, in our proposal, in our cost catalog, in our design templates? Every single one of those changes has implications across the board.
Yeah, I can really appreciate it, and the way that you spoke about it first, and I think is a key for us, is to remember, even though we're at a million or two or three or four or five or 10, um, the focus is this customer experience all the way through. Now, it requires, yes, in the operations, yes, the back office, the political garbage has to be there, whatever else, but what is the customer journey? And are we bringing the brand out, the promise we've made? is that being kept as we have to shift to changing environments? So really great example, seeing the whole picture, ensuring that it's all in there and not just saying, well, we're going to move and then we'll figure out the rest, tends to be a chance to lose key customers, get bad reviews, and hurt 4, 5, 6 more sales down the road, on these big kind of deals. So great little insight. And the second one, for people in at least 45 other states, reasons not to build in California. She let out with the regulations. Just
We
joking.
consider it
Okay.
our defensibility. It is really hard to do it here.
Yeah.
So,
That's
yes,
right. This is your barrier to entry.
exactly.
Everyone else is to
Good
stay
luck.
out because only you can deal with it. I love it. All right. Second piece then. Let's go back to this other idea that you were sharing, which had to do a deep dive in your data. What's
Mm.
that look like on the daily? And can you touch one example of what you're doing to see or key data that really helps you know if you're winning in your business or to understand when you have to make changes? And maybe where you get some of your key data when you're thinking outside of your business, because your training with Bain and others have helped you to see where some sources of data are that the typical 7-figure business owner doesn't know about.
For sure. Maybe I'll start with a macro example of the industry data and then maybe a micro inside
Yeah,
our
yeah,
business. So, macro level for us, again, back to what it would be for our construction industry, permits is data that is publicly available, just often in different forms, depending on which jurisdiction you're in. So, we invested some time getting that raw data from the key jurisdictions we operated in. Again, pick the 20% that are 80% of your business. It's not worth doing the entire gamut of it, but we picked like 4 jurisdictions, figured out what format their data was recorded in, and then wrote macros to extract the information we needed. And for us, that was to find out if it was a detached ADU, because again, we don't do like conversions of existing space. That was different for us. So we pulled that out, and then also pulled out the contractor data. Most permits have a contractor assigned to them when they're submitted. So by doing that, we were able to figure out what percent of this market we were, because it was hard to get real
nice.
good data on that. So that gave us the confidence to know, okay, if we're 3% of
So
this
you went to the
market,
permitting within those jurisdictions, pulled them, all the
yes,
data, then ran. And when you say a macro, we're just talking about a little formula that's
yes,
going to work through that data and pull out the ones that are the size and type that you really care about. So you can really see this is all the work that's happened in these 4 jurisdictions, and we know who did it, and we know roughly the size because some of that's listed in the permit data.
exactly. And a lot of it was listed as text strings. So it was just messy enough that most people probably weren't going to bother with it. We did this work a couple years back. I mean, now it would be even easier with all the AI advances to do this. So with that data, though, we were able to confirm, yes, we do think there's sufficient runway to just stay focused and dominating San Diego, versus
Nice.
trying to expand into another geography. So that was what we got out of
Wow.
that macro exercise.
Isn't that a question we all face? And you were able to see, wait, our sales team is telling us we've got to expand. We more opportunities. I'm running dry, but the data showed you've only got 5% of the market, right?
Exactly.
Or whatever. And
Yes,
to help you know that we could 10x right where we are in our backyard, keep our costs low, and really win big. And there's plenty of work.
that's exactly it. Yes.
Uh,
And then
Great insight. And then yeah,
on the micro side, I guess that an example I would give is getting granular data on things like variances. So, how much are your costs moving from what you projected them to be to what they will be ultimately? And how do you assign those variances as far as what caused it? Was it something that our team could have controlled? And if so, which part of our team? Was it a breakdown in our estimation process? Was it a breakdown in our design process because we omitted something? Was it a construction error where it was installed improperly? It was actually our subcontractor, and it's feedback for them. So, bothering to put the systems in place to capture consistent data from your team can then lead to being able to create the kind of reports that you need to hold people accountable for their own success.
no, I love that because and I've watched this in the builder space, especially, and engineering and all that construction world. They're like, well, why did we miss? And everyone will point, well, we're still backed up from supply line issues from back when, and that's driving the cost of these items up. That's just throwing everything off. Blah 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 blah. Like, true, and there's 4 other points that we
Exactly.
did have control over, right? we did have control over this. Or yes, wages went up, but not that much. Look at our hours. Are we pulling that together? I love that. Bother to track the data that's driving. I wouldn't track everything. I would track our main drivers. And for you, it's probably here's our supply costs, here's our install costs, here's estimating thought this, here's how everything played off. How did estimating get its numbers? Where did all of this come together? And now can we pinpoint and say, it looks like we've got two teams that can make a big impact for our business this next quarter. Let's have a conversation to figure out how,
Exactly.
right? Whitney, thank you so much. A lot of times for smaller businesses, we just haven't spent the time doing that because we focused on acquiring and keeping customers. And we haven't thought about how is this affecting, do I have a scalable operation? And we can actually grow out of our efficiency. Like the bigger we get, the less we make instead of
Yes,
the other way around, right?
for sure.
Really great insights. Thank you for sharing.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
what What's fun about the entrepreneurial journey is as you succeed, like you have, Whitney, you and your partner, as you succeed and you overcome crazy obstacles, that's in order to face a bigger one down the road. Right?
Yes.
That's just what we do. And that's the fun of this, right? We're always tackling a new challenge. It's fun to put some money in the bank account, but that's just to like fund the next challenge, right? We're going after the next thing. So, what are you facing now? What are you looking as you look down the road, like in order to fund our growth, in order to actually succeed? Here's something we need to work on. What comes to mind?
I think a big issue we're struggling with now as we grow is how to ensure that our team is equipped with the set of skills that's needed to succeed in this next phase of growth. So, a lot of our folks have been here since the beginning and are extremely versed in their part of the business. So now, either bringing a team on underneath them and training our current team to manage and to lead in a different way, or bringing on more experienced folks who could do that. So we've struggled with the right answer there because either way takes a big time investment. So being able to scale further is going to require us to pause really to get our team in gear to be able to take on more volume. And I also find that the size we're at is a very tricky one where if we were a bit bigger, there'd be more redundancy. So in a lot of our roles, there's a single person who knows how to do that very vital part of the job well. And when they're out, it's me covering. And it's not sustainable to have me covered. So getting myself out of the business too is another reason that we want to grow a bit larger so we can sustain a larger team that has that redundancy.
No, I love that. Let me see if I understand right on an issue here, though. You said in order to scale, we have to figure out how we're going to lead this team or how we're going to build leadership, another level of support for everybody else. Do you really see it holding back your ability to 2, 3, 5x in the next little while? And why? Why would that hold you back?
It will hold us back because we don't have any slack in the system right now. Um,
Okay.
we're at capacity in several of the departments we're operating, where we'll have to find another way, either through capacity or automation, to enable more jobs to sustainably go through the system. If everybody were here and there weren't any hiccups, we could do 2x, but you can't bank on that. Emergencies are going to happen. You just have to have that wiggle room. So I'd rather have us at a place where something like 80% allocated to operations, where we have 20% to occasionally absorb that flex and to continually move the business forward. We operate in Asana for all of our company focused initiatives, improvement areas. We probably by now have thousands of things that have been documented and sort of flagged for future development that we can't get to because we're too close to
Yeah.
maxed out on capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so real, and we don't always recognize it. Kudos to you for seeing it. The thing that we miss is we think growth means I just need to, if we just land that next big deal, or if we could dominate this new market, go and get it. But we forget that the ability to operate against those sales, or even the ability to consistently hit those sales, require people. They just do, or they
Yes.
require the systems that run auto. But there's People are needed. And no matter how much we want to believe otherwise, people are not consistent. Right? And so even your averages of numbers are because somebody's up one quarter and another person's down. You have to have enough of them so you have consistent growth. I mean,
Exactly.
how many of us have lost one key team member and it like shot all of our plans for growth that quarter? We have to restart. And with 15 people, you probably have like 6 points of failure where
Hmm.
any one of those 6 people, it would shut your business down until that's plugged, right?
That's exactly right.
That's that's a dreadful place to stay in. And it's the reason why we can't afford to say, I just want a lifestyle business that I can have this peaceful go, small team, and we know everything because life causes us to have emergencies, problems, and issues that if we don't get enough of us that can cover for each other and have the system keep going, it stops everything. So I love that. Thank you. That's that grow or die kind of thing because of these things. So let's play with it. Leaders. Oh, leaders and redundancy. So, first, with the leaders side, uh, we're not talking about building in bureaucracy. You said, I need 20% time focused on building the future instead of just operating the present. I need to
Yes.
have this flex. We need to get to all these things in Asana. We have these projects that if we don't do now, 6 months from now, we're not ready. A year from now, we're not ready. It's those absolutely essential, important tasks that are never urgent until
Yes.
it's too late, right?
Well said.
So, so you've nailed it. This is a key for growth at this time. Here's some things that I've noticed though in small business is that uh, from big business when I used to work there and do consulting kind of alongside some of these companies you're talking about. When we're doing it there, there's entire leadership development programs, staff rotations, right? They are building people for years to go and serve the way they want them to. And they're not even in typical operating roles in many
Right.
ways. They're kind of plugging in a little bit, but they're really doing project work in so many ways, right? You're like, I can't do that. I have 15 people. Did you see
Yeah.
my budget? I can't afford that. So what's it look like when we're small? Here's something that may help. And I I I have a whole system that I'm thinking through in my head, and I apologize. They all interact. So we'll touch a thread and how it interacts. So one is let's set aside a collective 20% of our current energy we have in our business towards building the future without adding a single role. Now, I'd say, but we're all maxed. I am aware of that, and I'm sorry. If you have budget, you can go ahead and hire some roles. But if you don't have budget and you want to bootstrap this through in the current, there's some advantage to doing this. So set aside 20% of our collective time. That doesn't mean 20% from every role. Some roles will be an hour a week,
Hmm.
right? Yours, Whitney, will be a lot more, right? You're going to be like 30 hours a week on this, working on the long term success of the business, 20% towards that. So, one of the first places is I need to build leadership. I need to give them a chance to go through the essential leadership duties. I'm going to lay those out. This is for any leadership role. Essential leadership duties are to set the vision, build the team, and create accountability, deliver those results, right? So set the vision, build the team, deliver results, and do that while caring for their team because the team is only going to put in as much as they feel they're cared for, right? The leader's job is not to send them off into battle to die. The leader's job is to support them to achieve great things, help them succeed at their goals. So the caring is essential. So let's take an example. You more than likely, because of your strategy background, take time already with the leadership team, at least quarterly, to look at the strategy big picture, make some adjustments, do some external scanning, do some internal measuring. Where are we good? Where aren't we? How are we going to use our strengths, leverage those? How are we going to overcome only the weaknesses that are hindering us today? We have too many to solve all, but we have to solve these. And you make some plans around those. That's happening today, I'm assuming, at least quarterly. Is that right, Whitney?
I would say yes. It probably more like 3 times a year, but yes, that's happening.
Okay.
And then, of course, the trick is
Trimester
holding
style.
yourselves accountable to that in the meantime, right?
That's right. So I'm going to go, we'll say you're 3 times a year. So you're doing this every 4 months, you're pulling this together. Here's how we do the accountable. We use public shaming. So I'm pulling in
Hmm.
different systems. I want you in that leadership team at one point in the meeting when the team has now decided this is the direction we have to go. We have to build this strength, let's suppose. You've identified to win in the market, we're going to have to figure this out. And it could be, from solar that you brought up, the ability to really figure out all these details, to lobbying. I don't know, wherever your strength is, it's needed. You're going to have to build a strength. Great. That's not on anyone's day job today. It's now become really big on Whitney's plate. Oh, she doesn't have that much time. That's okay because you have someone who does install here. You have someone else who understands some sales, and you have someone else who does a bit of your marketing, who are doing their day job pretty well right now. You're pleased with them. They have proven that they're ready for a little extra credit. Bring them into the strategy meeting saying, here's a direction we need to go now. And we've identified you as people that can be a part of a team to pull this off. But we need you to outline how are we going to pull this off. So they got the target. They know what they need to do. You've done that work. And now it's confined to, okay, there's the three of you plus this person from the leadership team. Go and lay out. I want this project managed, Gantt charted. Show me how you're going to make this a new strength that exists, how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to be followed up. Help us figure this out. And by the way, you're going to be meeting every 2 weeks for 10, 20 minutes just to report on. So the first one is an hour and a half. They've got a Gantt chart out there to figure it out. And then that will be presented back to the leadership team. What's happening in all this process is one, they're getting exposure, which
Hmm.
they really want. They want to work with the owners on key strategic issues. Two, what they plan and put together is going to be pretty good. You've got someone there from the leadership team who sees the direction. It's already laid out clearly. We have to do this if we win. Here's the measurables that we're going to measure this against. These three other people want to look good. So they want this to win. And then the implementation is so easy because they're representing the very teams that have to implement it. There's no pushback. There's only pull. In fact, there's so much dedication for this to win because think back to those leadership training things you did in the big companies. Their whole to remain a hypo, a high potential leader, they had to nail the projects that they were working on, right? They
Right.
had to show fast, big impact. That was the only way to move up. Each one of your team members wants to show that they can contribute to something bigger. So, what's happening in here? You're going to get this project done. It's going to happen. They're going to recruit help from the other, a member or two of their team. Yeah, so and so can help here. They won't be a part of the overall team. They don't need to be, but they're going to do little tasks and help out because this is the priority for the business. I didn't say you're building 8 of these teams to run at the same time. I'm talking about one, maybe 2 teams. That's it at this size of a business. This is the priority. This is where all extra effort goes to. It's to win in these spaces. These individuals are the ones doing it, and they're being taught how to identify what's important, how to build a plan, how to execute on it, how to organize others around it. So they're being taught how to be leaders. So what just happened with that 20% of time was you just achieved one of your big priorities that you needed done. The accountability happened because monthly at the leadership meetings, they're reporting in person. And in their little weekly or biweekly things, they're doing red, yellow, green. How am I on my SMART? We call them SMART goals underneath the priority. How am I doing? Am I on, off? Is this going to die if I don't get additional help? Right. So there's constant check in. They're working and they're building relationships across, which doesn't matter so much when you're 15 because everyone knows each other. But it's crucial when you're 80 and 50. If you don't build those now, you will have silos that will stop your growth later. So there's a hack. We're using a few things, several parts of the system. Your trimester planning, every 4 months planning, then pulling in a group of those people who are ready to do just a little bit more, show a little desire, have competency in their space already. They're doing follow-up. They're not going to let this fail because every month that leader owns it on the team and they need to fulfill their priority or they don't stay on the leadership team very long if they don't. And then this new crop of leaders is being developed as you go. And you're going to find that now people start leading from their seat, even without official leaders, because they're starting to do more and act more in this idea of we can build something great. So there's a thin line. And I know I gave you one example to pull through, but it works with small businesses.
And I love the call for structure and focus and giving people permission in a way to not worry about the other 900 items that are nice to haves.
That's right.
Giving that real laser focus on this is the one we're going to move forward now, picking the one that's going to have the biggest impact that will make it easier to then tackle the next 100 things that need to get done. So I think as leaders, just holding ourselves accountable to provide that structure for others is something that can be easy to allow to go by the wayside in the day to day where you're all trying to just get the job stuff lined up. You have to carve out that time to keep
Yeah.
the broader initiatives going.
I love that you do that every 4 months, that you're taking that time. It's just so key and essential. Just build in that other bit of reporting that has nothing to do with daily operations.
Mm-hmm.
It only has to do with the strategic priority. No other priority gets that kind of attention. In fact, nothing else is a priority. That's it. But that's hard. That's a hard discipline. You've done strategy long enough to know, right? Strategy is really about knowing what to say no to.
That's exactly right. Yes, it is.
It is. And the beauty of it is you also know that your customers, even though they want things as fast and cheap and high quality and innovative and easiest to use, they want all of those differentiators. No, they don't. You just need to be good enough. If you're great in the one area they care about, they think you're good at everything else. So let's keep the priorities to the strengths that will help us deliver on the one thing that matters most to our customers to win. At this size, we can't afford to do differently.
Love that.
Anyway, Whitney, fun. Push back on me now. What did I tell you that was just, that was just garbage, David. That's not going to help me at all. Help me understand better. Push back. I'm glad to dive deeper if you want to, or if this is what you needed for a start, we can wrap up.
I think it's exactly right. I guess the only pushback is how, not even pushback, but like what are the tips and tricks for making sure you are accountable for those week to week? Because in small business it is so easy to have, like I was saying, when you're close to capacity anyway, it's so easy to not make time for those things because there's these five other fires burning. So
Yeah,
what are your
yeah.
best practices for ensuring that as a leader you do make that time?
Um, we, you might be different than me, but in all reality, I'm not a leader anymore. It's my calendar is. I do what my calendar tells me to right now. Like I put it on the calendar and I'm going to do it. And so the first thing I do is that team is formed and we stick every one of the meetings on the calendar through to the end of when we project. It may be a 9 or for you, an 8-month run, right? That you see this as an 8-month kind of thing. We're going to break up this much has to be done in months 1 through 4 and this much in 5 through 8. That's fine. Put in every one of those meetings and they look like this. I have a weekly or a biweekly, depending on how many iterations are needed,
Mm-hmm.
how much flexibility is needed in the middle. If I feel like we're going to have to pivot a ton, I'm going to do weekly at the beginning. If I feel like it's going to be set and go, I'll do biweekly. But we put those on our calendar for all of those in the team. That's one person from the leadership team who owns the priority. It's
Mm-hmm.
their name on it. And then every one of the team members of the priority team. Okay, that's pulled from not the direct reports of that person. There may be a direct report, but just from across the company. Who's needed to solve this? That all goes right on their calendar. Also, it's very clear we have listed this is the result that has to come from it. And it doesn't sound like build a new solar array system, and process for how we'll deliver it. That may be one of the points down here. It's more like we're going to solve this issue so we win in the solar market. Then we get in the description that we have identified the regulations piece, that we have nailed down how we would install it, that we have it fully figured out. Right? All of the pieces are there, that everyone's trained on it, that SOPs are built around it, and that we are running it by this date. Oh, well, that's different, right? Okay. Now my project management looks a lot different than it did to come up with a nice suggestion. I don't want suggestions. I want stuff. I want it
I'm
moving.
hearing
So we're going
you
to get,
describe the same rigor that we'd manage a job with. So
that's
making sure to
right.
apply that same level to the company initiatives as well.
I, I tend to, in your kind of business, I'll put a PM, a project manager in for the first few rounds just to make sure that all of the projects we do run a system. And so she or
Hmm.
he will help to say, and here's how we run it, here's how we're measuring it, here's the Gantt charts. Everyone fills out and runs it and does a few cycles of it. So we see we've got a great project management system over our priorities. And yes, I do mean that. And there's times there's dollar budgets allotted to it and time allotted to it, that everything is there and we're tracking against that because we need that kind of rigor to win in the market.
Yeah.
So that's how I suggest to ensure we stay on it. Then each quarter, the first thing we do is we talk about how we did on the priorities, and we're talking monthly in the leadership meetings. Where are we at on their priority? Is that failing or not? This is the biggest thing we celebrate as a company on a strategic side. There's operational celebrations. That's a revenue hit, whatever. But this is strategically positioning us to win next year.
And giving visibility to those too, company wide, because I
Everybody
think so
knows.
often, right? So often we don't do that. Again, like you do with some of the more operational metrics.
That's right. That's the peer pressure I was talking about.
Yes,
When it's all
exactly.
announced right after the meeting, here is the big thing we're all about. Here's the team that's going to do it. Here's the leader that owns it. Anyone else want input? This is who you talk to. And we talk about it every month or weekly. There's a dashboard if there's something. I mean, however you want to give visibility, transparency,
Hmm.
keep the pressure high by letting everybody know. You can't hide it then.
Yep. Love that.
Sorry, that's for me because I am like you. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I've got other priorities. I'll just put that off till later. Once the team knows, I can't
Right.
lose face with the team. Right, I'm not going to let them down.
Yes,
Okay, well that kind of wraps up our time there, Whitney. I think we have 100 other things we could be diving into, but that was fun. Um,
it was.
if somebody wants to build there in their backyard a tiny little $500,000 home, or do other great work in the San Diego area, or maybe connect with you for potential opportunities across the country, how do they get in touch with
Best way to get in touch with us would be email via info@snapadu.com. We also have a wealth of information about the ADU space on our website, snapadu.com. A lot of what we do is education. We share everything that we learn about the regulations we were just talking about, cost. All the same information that we use for our team is published on our website to become a resource for folks. So that's the best way to get in touch. Just email info@snapadu.com. I should also mention the $500,000 jobs are the big ADUs. That's more like 1,200 square foot ADUs. The little guys, like 500 square foot, one bedroom, that's going to be more around 300K for the whole project, including permits, design, site work, all that good stuff.
you? Fantastic. No, I know. I'm just poking at you. Um,
It's expensive though. Can't deny that. It's brutal out in California.
we love the work you're doing, the businesses you're building. Thank you again, Whitney, for joining us. That wraps up this episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. If you, as a listener, have enjoyed it, please like and share. Do whatever's necessary to get it to other seven-figure business owners. And until next time, keep striving, keep learning, keep growing, keep overcoming those obstacles, and keep caring.